On the afternoon of March 17, 2023, a Friday, 12-year-old Beatriz Oliveira Santos left her home in the Jardim Piri neighborhood in the northern zone of São Paulo, telling her mother she was going to a friend's house to work on a school project. The sky was cloudy, with rain expected later in the afternoon, typical of São Paulo's autumn. Beatriz wore blue jeans, a white t-shirt with a floral print, and pink sneakers. She carried only a small purple backpack and her cell phone died at 2:37 p.m. The security cameras on the street recorded the girl walking alone on the sidewalk towards the bus stop. Beatriz was the only child of 38-year-old Marcia Oliveira, a receptionist at a dental clinic, and 42-year-old Paulo Santos, an app driver. A model student at the Professor Joe Silva Municipal School, she was in the 7th grade. According to reports from teachers and classmates, she was an outgoing, communicative girl with excellent grades. In her spare time, she liked watching videos on YouTube and interacting on social media, especially TikTok and Instagram. At 7:43 p.m., Marcia started calling her daughter's cell phone repeatedly, worried about her lateness. All the calls went to voicemail. Concerned, she contacted the parents of the friend Beatriz had mentioned, only to find out that the girl had never arrived there. In fact, according to her friend, there was no school project planned for that weekend. When I found out she had lied about the project, my heart froze. Beatriz had never done anything like this before, Marcia later shared in an interview. At 8:15 p.m., after unsuccessful attempts to reach her daughter, the couple went to the police station in the Tatuapé neighborhood to report the disappearance. The occurrence report was immediately filed, and due to the girl's age, the case was urgently forwarded to the Homicide and Personal Protection Department, DHPP, and the Missing Persons section of the State Department of Criminal Investigations, DIC. The first 24 hours after the disappearance were marked by intense searches in the surrounding area. Neighbors, family members, and friends formed groups to search squares, bus terminals, and subway stations. The military police mobilized teams to assist in the search, while civil police officers began taking statements from the closest family and friends. Beatriz's cell phone had been turned off shortly after her disappearance, making it difficult to locate her through tracking. However, preliminary analysis of phone records showed that the last connection occurred at 3:02 p.m. near Shopping Center Norte, about 3 kilometers from the family's home. That night, heavy rain fell over São Paulo, further complicating the search. The temperature dropped to 17 degrees Celsius, increasing concern for the girl's well-being. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity, Paulo Santos later described. We couldn't sleep, eat, or think. We just wanted our daughter back. The news of Beatriz's disappearance quickly spread on social media. A Facebook page called To-Dos per Beatriz, Everyone for Beatriz, was created the following morning, gaining over 5,000 followers in just 12 hours. Posters with the girl's photo were spread across the northern zone of São Paulo. The case gained even more media attention when TV Globo aired a report on Bom Dia São Paulo, appealing for information about the student's whereabouts. Special phone lines were set up by the police to receive tips, guaranteeing anonymity for informants. Meanwhile, at the Santos home, relatives arrived continuously to offer support. The modest 3-bedroom house became an improvised operations center, with lists of checked locations, important phone numbers, and organized shifts to ensure someone was always available to answer calls with possible information. On the second day of the disappearance, Detective Renato Carvalho, who was in charge of the case, called a press conference. We are working with several lines of investigation and are not ruling out any hypothesis. We ask anyone who has seen Beatriz after 2:30 p.m. on Friday to contact the authorities immediately, he declared. During the first 48 hours, over 30 tips were received, most from people who believed they had seen a girl matching Beatrice's description at different locations around the city. All the information was verified, but none were confirmed. If you want to follow more cases like this, ones that shake society and reveal hidden truths, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any investigations, the reporter concluded. The morning of the third day after the disappearance, a crucial discovery changed the course of the investigation. Upon analyzing Beatrice's personal computer, investigators from the Cybercrime Division found extensive conversations with an Instagram profile identified as Lucas Mendez, who claimed to be a 15-year-old guitarist in a starting band and a resident of São Paulo. The messages, which began about 2 months before the disappearance, showed a typical progression of grooming. Initially, casual conversations about music and TV shows, followed by frequent compliments, confidences, and eventually, romantic declarations. The supposed Lucas had gradually gained Beatrice's trust, creating a strong emotional connection with the girl. This was a classic case of psychological manipulation, explained Detective Claudia Moreira, a specialist in cybercrimes. The predator presented himself as someone close to her age, with common interests, and built a trust bond over time. The last conversation between Beatrice and Lucas took place on the morning of the disappearance. In it, they arranged to meet for the first time at 3 p.m. in the food court of Shopping Center Norte. Lucas had suggested Beatrice not tell anyone about the meeting, claiming he wanted to surprise her. The investigation into Lucas Mendez's profile quickly revealed it to be a completely fake identity. The photos used were of a teenage American, taken from social media and slightly altered. The IP used to create the account was traced back to an internet cafe in the Belém neighborhood, in the eastern zone of São Paulo. Based on this information, the investigators requested security camera footage from Shopping Center Norte. After hours of meticulous analysis, investigators identified Beatrice entering the establishment at 2:58 p.m. 20 minutes later. The cameras recorded the girl talking to a man who appeared to be between 35 and 40 years old, very different from the teenager in the profile pictures. The man, of average height, wore dark jeans, a black t-shirt, and a cap, which made it difficult to fully identify his face. The footage initially showed Beatrice, and after a few minutes of conversation, she appeared more relaxed at 3:37 p.m. Both of them left the shopping center together, entering a silver car, possibly a Volkswagen Gol, whose license plate could not be identified due to the camera angle. That moment, when we saw our daughter leaving with a complete stranger, was devastating, Paulo Santos later recalled in an interview. We realized she had been deceived in the worst way possible. The civil police immediately began working on identifying the suspect. Forensic technicians enhanced the images to obtain as many details as possible of the partially visible face. The composite sketch was distributed to all police stations in the state and widely shared in the media. Meanwhile, a specialized team from the federal police was incorporated into the investigation, bringing additional resources for digital tracking and data analysis. Cybercrime experts started mapping the online activity of the fake profile, looking for connections with other similar cases or clues about the real identity behind the account. A turning point occurred when investigators, with judicial authorization, gained access to the records of all cellular phone towers activated in the shopping center area at the time of the disappearance. Cross-referencing this data with information on vehicles similar to the one seen on the cameras, more concrete clues started to emerge. Meanwhile, media coverage intensified. The case gained national attention with special reports on major news programs. Beatrice became one of the most talked about topics on social media. Artists and influencers shared the girl's photo, expanding the reach of the search. On the fourth day after the disappearance, a gas station employee on the Presidente Dutra Highway, heading towards Rio de Janeiro, recognized the man from the composite sketch. According to her statement, he had stopped to fuel a silver car around the same time of day as the disappearance, accompanied by a girl who seemed to be asleep in the passenger seat. I found it strange because the girl never woke up, even with the activity at the station, the employee reported. But he explained that she was his daughter, very tired after a day of sightseeing. The witness recalled that the man paid in cash and appeared nervous, constantly looking around. Most importantly, the gas station security cameras partially captured the vehicle's license plate, a silver Gall with plates starting with FDK. With this crucial information, the Federal Highway Police was called in to monitor all vehicles with this license plate configuration on the highway. Simultaneously, the Department of Transit provided a list of all registered vehicles with plates. Starting with that sequence, the list contained 237 vehicles across the state of São Paulo. After cross-referencing with the vehicle's characteristics seen in the footage and filtering from male owners with an age range similar to the suspects, 42 potential targets remained. The investigative teams split up to verify each of the owners, prioritizing those with criminal records or residents in the eastern zone of São Paulo, close to the Belém neighborhood, where the fake profile had been created. Among the names on the list was Roberto Almeida Ferreira, 39, a resident of the Guaianeses neighborhood. Ferreira had a prior conviction for sexual harassment and had been investigated in an unresolved case of online harassment involving a teenager 3 years earlier, although the case had been closed due to lack of conclusive evidence. When investigators arrived at the registered address, they discovered that Ferreira had not lived there for about 8 months. Neighbors reported that he had moved out after a disagreement with the landlord, leaving no forwarding address. It was a frustrating moment, recalled Detective Renato Carvalho. We had a strong suspect, but he had disappeared. Every hour that passed was critical for Beatrice's safety. The search for Roberto Ferreira intensified. Bank records, family inquiries, and monitoring of potential contacts were implemented. His photo was added to the existing alerts about the case. Meanwhile, criminal behavior experts analyzed the suspect's profile. The level of planning indicated an experienced predator, said forensic psychologist Dr. Helena Campos, a consultant. For the investigation, the creation of an elaborate profile, the patience in building trust over months, and the careful selection of the meeting place suggested someone who had done this before. This hypothesis led investigators to revisit unsolved cases of missing minors in the São Paulo metropolitan area over the last 5 years, looking for similar patterns. 3 cases stood out with disturbing similarities. Girls between 11 and 13 years old, all approached via social media by profiles posing as teenagers who disappeared after agreeing to meet in person. As the 5th day of Beatrice's disappearance approached, the family's anguish reached unbearable levels. Marcia had been medicated after successive panic attacks, while Paulo tirelessly walked the streets of São Paulo, distributing posters and questioning homeless people, taxi drivers, and shopkeepers. We couldn't just sit and wait, said Paulo. Even with all the police resources, we felt like we needed to do something, anything, to find our daughter. On the morning of the 5th day after the disappearance, an anonymous phone call drastically changed the course of the investigation. A man who refused to identify himself reported having seen a silver car parked for at least 3 days in a remote area near the Billings Reservoir, in the Grajaú region, on the southern outskirts of São Paulo. The informant said he noticed the vehicle because it was unusual to see cars parked in that area for so long, especially one that appeared to be in good condition, reported investigator Carlos Mendonca. He also mentioned a strong, unpleasant odor beginning to emanate from the location. A tactical team from the civil police, accompanied by investigators from the case and forensic experts, was immediately dispatched to the location. The area known as the Snow Jose Resort was a region of small farms and country houses on the banks of the reservoir, with several unpaved access roads and little foot traffic, especially on weekdays. At 9:47 a.m., the police located the described vehicle, a silver Volkswagen Gol, license plate FDK 725, registered in the name of Roberto Almeida Ferreira. The car was parked in a wooded area, partially covered by vegetation, approximately 200 meters from the reservoir's edge. The windows of the vehicle were closed, and there was condensation inside. The agents, following protocols for approaching potentially criminal situations, surrounded the vehicle and requested additional support before any close approach. There was immense tension among us, later recalled Sergeant Oliveira, one of the first to arrive at the scene. We knew we could be facing a tragic outcome, but there was also hope of finding the girl alive. At 10:12 a.m., after confirming that there was no movement inside the vehicle, the police proceeded with forcibly opening the driver's side door. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The body of a man, later identified as Roberto Ferreira, was in the driver's seat with a gunshot wound to his right temple. A .38 caliber pistol was found lying between his legs. A quick search of the vehicle revealed no sign of Beatrice, increasing the urgency to locate her dot in the glove compartment. The investigators found a printed map with handwritten markings in various rural areas around the reservoir. On the back seat, there was a lilac backpack, the same one Beatrice had been carrying on the day of her disappearance. That moment was devastating and at the same time confusing, said Detective Carvalho. We had found the prime suspect, but he was dead, possibly from suicide, and there was no sign of the girl. A massive search operation was immediately organized, focusing on the areas marked on the map. Firefighter teams, sniffer dogs, drones, and divers were mobilized to cover the vast area, which included dense forest and parts of the reservoir. A preliminary analysis of the body indicated that Roberto had died approximately 48 hours earlier, meaning Beatrice might have been alone, possibly injured or in danger, for at least 2 days. During the examination of the vehicle, more disturbing elements were found. In the trunk, there were ropes, adhesive tapes, a blood-stained blanket, and various medications, including a bottle of chloroform, a substance used to sedate people. In a compartment under the driver's seat, the experts found a laptop and 3 cell phones, including Beatrice's. Immediate analysis of the devices revealed that Roberto had not only created the fake profile used to lure Beatrice, but at least 7 other fake profiles across different social networks, all aimed at targeting minors. The message history indicated that he was simultaneously in contact with 4 other girls, all between 11 and 14 years old, using the same grooming technique. Even more disturbing was the discovery of a digital folder containing photos of several teenage girls, some clearly taken without the victim's knowledge, in public places such as schools, parks, and malls. Among the images were 2 of the missing girls from similar cases that had been connected during the investigation. What we discovered was the profile of a meticulous serial predator who had been operating for years without detection, explained Detective Claudia Moreira. He had developed a sophisticated system to identify, gain trust, and eventually abduct his victims. As the analysis of the devices continued, the search for Beatrice intensified. Military police helicopters flew over the area, while over 200 officers combed the land. The local community also mobilized, with residents and fishermen helping in. The search dot by the end of the afternoon on the 5th day, an alarming discovery was made. About 1.5 kilometers from where the car had been found, near a small abandoned building that had once been a fishing club, sniffer dogs reacted strongly, indicating the possible presence of human remains. The old structure, partially destroyed and overtaken by vegetation, was locked with a recent padlock, a stark contrast to the deteriorated state of the rest of the building. Firefighters forced the entry, and inside the dark and stuffy space, they found evidence of recent occupation: water bottles, food wrappers, a mattress, and most importantly, blood stains on the concrete floor. Never give up on the truth if you believe all the missing deserve to be found, the announcement read. The search team immediately expanded the perimeter around the building. As the sun began to set, making the search even more challenging, flashlights and floodlights were set up to allow the work to continue through the night at 7:23 p.m. The tense silence that had hung over the operation was broken by a scream. One of the firefighters had located something that appeared to be a body, approximately 200 meters from the abandoned building, partially buried under dense undergrowth. The area was immediately cordoned off, and forensic experts were urgently called to the scene. The darkness and the need to preserve evidence made the process meticulous and slow. A tent was set up, and generators were brought in to illuminate the area, while technicians worked in the early hours of the 6th day after the disappearance. The news everyone feared was confirmed. The body found was that of Beatriz Oliveira Santos. The girl was wearing the same clothes as on the day she disappeared, showed signs of violence, and according to the preliminary analysis, had died between 24 and 36 hours before being found. The news devastated the family and moved the entire country. At the Santos residence, friends and family gathered to support the parents, who required medical attention after receiving the confirmation. There are no words to describe the pain of losing a daughter this way, Paulo stated in a brief statement. 2 days later, now we are fighting for justice and for no other family to go through what we are going through. The detailed forensic investigation revealed the chronology of the events. After finding Beatriz at the shopping mall, Roberto took her to the Billings Reservoir area, where he had prior knowledge of the area and the abandoned building. The body analysis indicated that the girl had been held captive for approximately 3 days, suffering physical and sexual violence during this period. The cause of death was identified as mechanical asphyxiation, likely occurring on the 4th day after her disappearance. After committing the crime, Roberto attempted to hide the body in the wooded area, and apparently tormented by what he had done or fearing capture, committed suicide with a gunshot to the head inside his own vehicle. What makes this case even more tragic is that Beatriz had been kept alive for days, meaning there was a window of opportunity to rescue her, lamented Detective Carvalho. If we had identified the suspect more quickly, perhaps the outcome would have been different. A thorough analysis of Roberto Ferreira's electronic devices revealed a disturbing history of online predation. For at least 6 years, he had created dozens of fake profiles, always posing as a teenager to gain the trust of young girls. On his laptop, over 300 conversations with minors from across Brazil were found. Even more serious was the discovery that Roberto was potentially connected to at least 4 other disappearance cases in the states of São Paulo and Minas Gerais. One case, 2 years earlier in Campinas, involved a 13-year-old girl who was never found. The case sparked a wave of national outrage and intense debates about the safety of children and adolescents on the internet. Digital security experts, psychologists, and law enforcement authorities began to emphasize the dangers of online grooming and the importance of parental supervision over children's digital activities. In the National Congress, the Beatriz case accelerated the processing of bills aimed at increasing penalties for pedophilia crimes and online grooming of minors. The Beatriz Law, as it became known, was passed 6 months after the crime, establishing stricter measures against sexual predators and creating new mechanisms for monitoring suspects. Across schools in the country, educational programs on digital safety were implemented, teaching children and adolescents how to recognize suspicious behavior online and the importance of never sharing personal information or arranging meetings with people they only knew virtually. For the civil police of São Paulo, the case resulted in the creation of a specialized division for cybercrimes against children and adolescents, with investments in technology and specific training for investigators. The unit began to work preventively, monitoring social networks and websites in search of predators before they could cause harm. Beatrice's parents, after months of intense mourning, founded the NGO Anjos Digitae, Digital Angels, dedicated to raising awareness among families about the dangers of the internet and offering psychological support to victims of online crimes. The initiative quickly gained national recognition, establishing partnerships with schools, technology companies, and government bodies. We can't bring our daughter back, but we can honor her memory by saving other children, Marcia said. In an interview 1 year after the tragedy, we want Beatrice's legacy to be a safer world for all children. The impact of the case also extended to social media platforms, which faced increasing pressure to implement more effective age verification measures and monitor potentially dangerous conversations involving minors. Some companies developed specific algorithms to detect grooming patterns and alert systems for parents regarding suspicious activities. Beatrice's story, though deeply tragic, sparked significant changes in how Brazilian society addresses the digital safety of children and adolescents. Official statistics, 2 years after the crime, showed a 27% reduction in reported cases of online grooming, largely attributed to awareness campaigns and new legal measures dotted the site where Beatrice's body was found. A small square was built in her memory, featuring a reading bench and a yellow IP flower, her favorite flower according to friends. The space became a point of reflection on the protection of childhood and the vigilance needed in the digital world. This case reminds us that behind every online profile, there may be someone very different from what they seem, emphasized Detective Claudia Moreira, who began giving lectures on the topic across the country. The internet offers predators anonymity and easy access to victims, something that didn't exist in the past, and we need to always be one step ahead. The investigation of Beatrice's case also led to the reopening of several unsolved missing person inquiries throughout Brazil, with a renewed focus on possible connections to cybercrimes. 2 of these cases were later solved, bringing some comfort to the families who, like the Santos family, had endured the unbearable pain of uncertainty and eventually loss. For the investigators who participated in the case, the experience left deep marks. No training fully prepares a police officer to deal with crimes against children, confessed Detective Renato Carvalho, who later specialized in digital crimes. Every case like this reminds us of the importance of our work and the responsibility we have toward the victims and their families. 5 years after the crime, Beatrice Oliveira Santos' name remains alive, not only in the memories of her loved ones, but in the ongoing prevention work inspired by her case. Her story, though painful, has become a powerful warning about the invisible dangers that can hide behind a screen. If you watched until here, it's because you care about these cases that affect families forever, the video concluded. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until here so I can get to know you and see who truly cares about the search for truth." Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. Every share can help save lives, alerting other families to the dangers our youth face in the digital world. 7 years after the Beatrice case, its aftermath continues to influence Brazilian society and public policies related to the protection of children and adolescents. The story of the girl who became a victim of an online predator became a reference point in discussions about digital security, privacy, and media education. Brazil, which had previously had legislation considered lenient for cybercrimes against minors, now has one of the strictest legal frameworks in the world in this area. The Beatrice Law initially focused on increasing penalties, evolved through subsequent amendments to establish the creation of the National Registry of Sexual Predators and an integrated monitoring system between various public safety agencies. In 2028, on the eve of the 5th anniversary of the law, the Ministry of Justice released a report detailing the results achieved, a 43% reduction in online grooming cases, the early identification of over 800 potential predators before they could cause physical harm to their victims, and the rescue of 72 minors who were in imminent danger after being contacted by criminals online. The Digital Angels organization, founded by Beatrice's parents, significantly expanded its operations, establishing 27 branches in all Brazilian capitals and annually assisting over 15,000 families. The organization's work was internationally recognized, receiving the UNICEF Global Child Protection Award in 2027. When we started this work, it was a way to channel our pain into something positive, explained Paula Santos during the award ceremony. We never imagined it would become such a widespread movement. Every child we managed to protect is a small victory in Beatrice's name. Marcia Oliveira, who returned to her studies after the tragedy and graduated in psychology with a specialization in child trauma, became a national reference in assisting families of sexual crime victims. Her book After the Silence, The Healing Journey After Violence, published in 2026, became an essential guide for mental health professionals working with similar cases. In the educational sphere, Beatrice's legacy manifested in the mandatory inclusion of safe digital education in Brazil's school curricula. Since 2026, all public and private schools in the country are required to offer specific awareness programs about online dangers, adapted to different age groups. Children are born into a digital world and need to learn how to navigate it safely, just as we teach them to cross the street or not accept candy from strangers, defended the Minister of Education at the time of the program's implementation. The Beatrice case showed us that this is not an optional matter, but an urgent need. The investigation into the case also revolutionized the working methods of Brazilian police. The specialized division created in São Paulo after the crime became a model for similar units across all states. Specialized officers began working with online fake profiles, identifying and capturing predators before they could carry out their crimes. In 2021, the National Justice Council published a study detailing how the investigative techniques developed from the Beatrice case had contributed to the resolution of 17 old disappearance cases, some of which were over a decade old, bringing answers to families who had lived in uncertainty. Social media platforms, pressured by stricter laws and public opinion, implemented advanced protection systems for minors. Age verification using biometrics, monitoring conversational patterns suggestive of grooming, and direct reporting channels with immediate response became industry standards. In the community where Beatrice lived, the impact was even deeper. The school she attended was renamed Beatrice Oliveira Santos Municipal School and implemented one of the country's most comprehensive digital safety programs. The Jardim Piri neighborhood, previously known for infrastructure and safety issues, mobilized to create a community network for child protection, with neighbors trained to identify suspicious behaviors and risky situations. A tragedy like the one we lived through can destroy a family, a neighborhood, or it can unite everyone around a greater cause, reflected a neighbor of the Santos family in a special report marking the 10th anniversary of the case. We chose the hardest path, which is to transform pain into positive action. On the date that would have marked Beatrice's 18th birthday, in 2029, the National Center for Digital Protection of Children and Adolescents was inaugurated in Brasilia. The complex, which brings together researchers, police officers, psychologists, and technology experts, became an international reference in developing strategies to combat cybercrimes against minors. During the inauguration ceremony, Paulo and Marcia planted a yellow IP flower in the central garden of the complex, alongside a plaque inscribed, "In memory of Beatrice and all the children who lost their lives to violence. May her story continue to save lives." The Beatrice case, which initially represented one of the darkest faces of the digital age, became a turning point in Brazilian society. A tragedy that, through the immense pain it caused, awakened consciences and mobilized efforts that resulted in a safer environment for millions of children. As forensic psychologist Helena Campos, who has followed the case since the beginning, pointed out, there are tragedies that, unfortunately, need to happen for society to wake up to problems that were always there, said Campos. The Beatrice case showed us that technology advances much faster than our ability to protect our children from the dangers it brings. The difference is that now we know that, and we are acting on it. In an increasingly connected world, where the boundaries between the real and virtual are becoming ever more blurred, Beatrice's story remains a permanent reminder that behind every profile, every message, every photo shared, there are real people, some vulnerable, others with dark intentions, and that the responsibility to protect the most vulnerable is and always will be collective.